Hi guys, you are listening to the Cat with Strength podcast. If you enjoy this show, don't forget to give it a share. First and foremost, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
In true podcast tradition, I like to ask a question of the day for every listener that comes on the podcast. We don't usually tell the guests what the question is going to be before they come on. We just kind of like throw it on them. So today's question of the day for you is, if you were to have a theme song, so every time you walk into a room this song would be played, what would be your theme song?
Probably Don't Stop Me Now by Queen.
Brilliant. Straight to the answer there.
Yeah, if I'm out running sometimes, I'm not a very fast runner. I plod along, but I listen to music, I tend to. And we used to have a running joke about this kind of, don't stop me now. I'm having such a good time. I'm having a blast, and I'd just be running and, I could have gone through the finish line and keep going and, so probably that off the cuff.
We've had, you're the third podcast we've asked this question to so far, and that's definitely the quickest answer we've had. You were just like, don't stop me now, Queen.
Well, I was just thinking of, that time where I was running along and people were laughing and I'm like, oh, don't stop me now.
Is that your go-to song when you're out running?
Not particularly, no, but it will keep me going. If I tend to try and listen to something upbeat, because I've got a mixed bit on the playlist and stuff, but you might come across Adele or something and you feel like you kind of suddenly start going a bit slower, so I need something with a bit of a
music helps, doesn't it?
It does.
It definitely helps.
I like being running up in the forestry and with the birds and the peace sometimes, and we've got the dogs and stuff, so I might not take music then. I'll just go and enjoy being outside. But sometimes in races, if I feel like I'm trying to go a bit faster, it covers up the and it feels a bit of a slog, so I can I'll just run one more song, or I'll run for a bit and stuff. So, and
even if it's just one more song, that's usually about 2.5 minutes of running.
It is, 5
songs,
and it takes your mind off it a bit. You can,
I know.
And I've got these little earpods that you can stop and start. So if someone comes alongside and chats or something, you can still hear them, and it's been conduct or whatever. So, it's not too antisocial, I think. So, but it does help sometimes pass the time on the longer runs.
I've only recently started a podcast. This is episode 11 of the podcast, which I'm really chuffed about because I never thought I'd get over double figures. But we've only actually done 3 days of recording, so technically it's my 3rd day of recording podcasts. So it's still relatively new to me. It's all kind of new. I like to try and ask like the general public and things like, who would they like to have on, any recommendations for guests, and your name came up twice, and your story is so inspiring and just amazing, really.
Thank
you. So without me explaining anything, like, could you give like the background on who you are, what's your story, and then we can go from there? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I'm Jane Holmes, as you know. So I live in Wales with my husband, and we've been over here for about 14 years. Moved over from London direction, and we've got rescue dogs, and we live up in the hills, and we've been in Wales. We moved over in 2010, so we've been in Wales a few years, and then I was out running. We'd joined the running club and all kind of fit and healthy, really enjoying outside life. And then I got diagnosed with lung cancer, and I was age 43, 44 at the time. It was 2014, so I was relatively young, and I didn't see it coming at all, I guess. I think women especially at my age probably would have thought breast cancer more so than lung cancer affecting someone. I've always associated lung cancer with older smokers, men in pubs, and that kind of thing. It's a very stigmatized cancer. And, I kind of grab any opportunity to be able to raise awareness, which is why, thank you for inviting me on, really, because anyone with lungs can get lung cancer. And, if people are worried about something, I'd urge them to go to the doctors. There was a big thing with COVID, people were having coughs and presuming it was COVID. And so the detection rates of lung cancer fell because they were kind of presumed it was COVID, and the doctors were like, we'll take antibiotics, which they quite often do if things don't go. And there's various other symptoms to lung cancer, like pain in shoulders or coughing up blood, and things to worry about, I guess. But if you've had a cough for more than 3 weeks, that's normally one of the flags. And that was part and parcel of COVID. So an early detection is something that will save save lives, really. So there are screening programs, but, you know, if you're worried, I'd ask the GPs for an X-ray, for sure. I was really lucky with the GP because, as I say, lung cancer wasn't on my radar at all. And originally I got diagnosed because I had a pain up my nose, which felt really odd. It felt like I was breathing in cold air, just on one side. And I'd had some dental work done up on one of my teeth. So originally I started with the dentist and saying if I got an infection because it had involved the root. And I thought, oh, maybe there's an infection up on that front tooth. So they did a scan and they said, no, it's fine. So I went to the doctor and they said, oh, maybe it's sinus. So I waited about 4 months or something for a routine sinus check down at the hospital, which they checked the sinuses and said, no, they're fine. So I went back to the GP and she said, oh, we'll get an X-ray of your chest, which is really unusual for a, nose symptom, I guess, and send you to maxillofacial. But I never got to maxillofacial because the X-ray of my chest showed a tumour. And they said, oh, well, you've got lung cancer, but it's caught really early. So we should be able to operate and, that'll be fine. Great. Life's good. So it was a real shock, but it was good news in a way that it was caught so early. So I'd met with a surgeon and things were all going along in parallel a bit because they were still doing other checks and other scans. And then they did a scan that showed it had gone to the base of my neck as well. So it was suddenly like surgery was off the table. And they were saying, well, this is not treatable. Well, it's treatable, but incurable and, terminal. And I made the mistake of saying, what's the prognosis? And he said, well, 1 in 3 would be here in a year's time.
Wow.
Which to me, and he did counter that by saying, but you're younger and you're fitter than a lot of people we'd be seeing at this stage. It was, advanced stage 3B is what they call it. So, you kind of leave thinking, because you feel like the same, physically, you feel the same as when you went into the appointment. So you're kind of like, what does he mean?
Wow.
That in a year's time I won't be here. What does that year look like? Will I be really ill? I could go home and go for a run.
Yeah, emotionally, mentally, how I don't know how you deal with that. Like at that time, feeling good and having that prognosis.
I think to start off with, you just get, your life becomes a bit of a snowball of tests. And they're talking a language almost you don't understand. We went back for scans and they said, oh, that you've got a bit of a hot spot there.
What's a hot
Is
spot?
that good? Is it bad? And it was, but so you get a whole new terminology. And I joined some forums, some online forums, which were quite useful. And you could say, oh, well, this is my situation at the moment. And other people obviously would come in going, oh, have you asked this? Have you asked that? Which might lead your questions to your clinical team. There's some things with the forums where obviously it's other patients. So clinically their answers might not be right. And, I'd gone to one of my clinicians one time saying, oh, the forum said if I have surgery, I won't be eligible for clinical trials in future. And he just came back with one line in his email going, the forum's wrong. So you've got to temper it a bit in terms of what you ask, I guess, and what you advise. And I'll never say to people, oh, have you tried this treatment? Everyone's different. Everyone reacts to things differently. And I feel like I've just been incredibly lucky in a way with that I am here, after that year. I've made friends through lung cancer and, some of them aren't here, and they're young and they were, young, middle-aged women like me. But they were fit as well. Yeah. So I suppose it's that kind of trying to make people aware that lung cancer is really common lung cancer to get.
Do you know how common it is, like in terms of numbers, or is any?
It's one of the most, the mortality rate's high for it because it's often caught late. People present in A&E and things. So pancreatic cancer's probably if there's a scale rating, is probably the worst.
Aggressive.
Yeah, and then your lung cancer's the next one up.
We've just done a podcast now with Scott, who lost his father 2 years ago to pancreatic cancer, and he's raising money now. So we've just spoken about pancreatic cancer. Yeah. So it's really learning a lot today, to be honest with you.
Yeah, we've done a lot with Roy Castle Lung Cancer Foundation, but there was another girl that I was friends with who also had lung cancer, who's sadly no longer with us. But we went to a conference and our oncologist was presenting, and he'd put up a slide which had pancreatic cancer at the bottom and then lung cancer next up, And she kind of leant across going, this is his happy slide. And I was like, yeah. I said, well, at least we haven't got pancreatic. And she was like, yeah, that'd be really shit. We've you get a sick kind of humour almost, because it's like, it's still pretty shit. but it is what it is once you get diagnosed, and you just have to crack on. And all you can do is find out what you can find out, and I guess be a bit persistent as well. I was a bit pushy, could be the words, I suppose. I used to work in the NHS as well, and I think I'm not afraid to ring up and say, can I have my scan now? Where are the results? What do we do now then? Whereas like my mum's generation, she would be like, oh, well, the doctor hasn't rung back. And I'm like, have you rung him? And it wouldn't cross her mind. So, I tried to not manage it's nice to be able to try and take some control. Because you are completely out of control. You've just got tests and people throwing answers at you, and you're doing this now, then you're doing that. So a lot of it is out of control, but some bits you can make sure that you don't get missed.
I suppose it gives you peace of mind, knowing the fact that you have rang them to check, and they've told you that they're either waiting for the results, or at least then, right, I've checked, and they are waiting for the results. So
but sometimes I've had things where, it was emailed across to the... I said, well, who shall I email it to? And I emailed something to someone. And then I've just out of the back of my mind, I rang them to see if they'd got it. And they said, oh, she's on leave. And I said, oh, is anyone picking up her emails? And she said, oh, no. I was like, okay. And she was off 2 weeks. So I was like, well, who are you? Can I email you? Can you go and put it on her desk for me? And I rang her back and said, have you got it? Have you put it? But it was that. And that sounds really micromanaging. But I thought, and that was waiting for surgery.
If you hadn't done that, though.
Which was really important, And meanwhile... it's still in my chest, even if it's someone's inbox. It's that kind of bit, and everyone else is in the same inbox. So let's try and bump you to the top a bit. So it's that kind of...
We had, my son's got Down syndrome, and he has, he goes for a health check every year, and he goes back and forth and things like that. And we had his health check about 2 months ago with Dr. Kuma in Aberystwyth, lovely doctor. And he's referred him to have some sort of scan done. Long story short, brilliant. We had a letter last week to say that we've missed the scan, and we never had a letter to say when the scan was. So if we would have taken a leaf out of your book and asked where, we would have probably got out earlier. And it was.
Yeah, I think you live and learn. Probably wasn't as pushy at the start as I was as time went on. Almost, I changed clinicians I was being treated initially in Carmarthen by an oncologist who actually I knew through running. I knew her socially beforehand. And then I was kind of ending up texting her going, I've just been referred to you professionally. And she was like, don't Google anything, which was I was like, okay. And so, unless it was NHS or Macmillan, some reliable websites just don't. And I went in to see her. And she was brilliant. But she was leaving her job as time went on. So she started me on some chemo back in 2014. And then we were going to do some radiotherapy. But that's when she was about to shift out, and she didn't want me to get lost in amongst locums and things like that. So she referred me over to Cardiff, where she knew that she could talk about the radiotherapy plan with someone who was going to be there for a bit. So I ended up going over to Cardiff and having a course of radiotherapy after the chemotherapy back in 2014, 2015. And that was 6 weeks of driving back and forth to Cardiff every day, which was quite because the treatment's actually really short.
Every day then, is that?
Monday to Friday,
Wow. And you got to do the drive every day? Every
day, I did, yeah. Wow. So that was 6 weeks. It was about 5,000 miles or something all in. So, which was fine. But, and then I became eligible for surgery, which was incredible and really, really lucky. Actually, I think clinically really lucky. And I had the top half of top third of my right lung taken out in 2015. So, and we always had a history of doing Snowdon Marathon. So my husband, who's into fitness and everything, he was like, are we going to do that this year? I was like, because I had the surgery in July. So we were like, why not October? So we did Snowdon Marathon together. So, which was great. So
just to get this straight now, so I think you've just grazed over that really quickly, like it's nothing. So you had a third of your lung removed. Is that what you said?
Yeah, well, the third. So the right side of my lung would be, you get three lobes in your right side. So the top one of that's gone.
So a big part of your lung removed.
Yeah. So
and you've got lung cancer, and
3
months later, is it 3 months?
Yeah,
4 months.
August, September, October. Yeah, no, about 3.5 months.
So about 3.5 months after you have that surgery, you go and run a marathon on Snowdon.
Yeah, Snowdonia Marathonary. So we'd done it before for a few times. My husband ran with me, so he'd got a bag and stuff just to help and keep me warm and stuff. But and Marathonary is brilliant. They're such a supportive. Yeah. You probably know Matt Ward and Jane Lloyd, maybe, I don't know, who run. They're up with Coedy Brennan and stuff, and they do a lot to do with started doing Marathonary, and they're like a really family support. So they gave me an inspirational award in a later year and stuff, which was lovely. An old painting of Snowdonia, which was done by a local artist and stuff. So, and they've always been really supportive of me since knowing all that. So it's
I think that's incredible. By the way, you should be massively proud of that, and so inspirational and inspiring. It's hard for me to get my head around it, to be honest. I'm just comparing it to someone who has like a surgery, whether it's like I don't know, like to do if you've broken an ankle or you've got an ACL reconstruction, and you'd wait about 10 months before you're back on the rugby pitch, and you've had 100% something a lot harder to go through and deal with. And you're running up Snowdon in a
it kind of gets around Snowdon, so it's a kind of it's not up to the top, it's not the up and down one, it's hilly, but it's it is round and about, but it's but no, it's a good challenge to have in mind, because one other thing I was doing apart from raising awareness was I was starting to raise money for lung cancer as well, for Roy Castle Lung Cancer Foundation. So it meant I could do fundraising by actually doing something as well. So by saying I'm going to do this, people were supporting me, and people were holding garden parties and things. We did a lot of fundraising, and the community was brilliant. They were just really supportive, and it was nice because it meant that I could talk to people about lung cancer, and because I was talking about it openly as well, people were happy to say, how are you doing? Or, I could witter on about it to someone. So, but I was clear after the lobectomy and stuff and doing that, I was clear of lung cancer. Well, clear, as I never like to say clear, but my scans weren't showing anything for a couple of years. And then in 2017, it picked up something in my neck. At a scan, which again, I was doing Snowdon Marathon just after it picked it up. So I was like, once I've done that, I'll come back and have the surgery. So I had the surgery in December then, and they took out all the lymph chain on the right side of my neck. So I had a complete neck dissection down the right side. And that was just before Christmas. And then I had radiotherapy in another 6 weeks, another 5,000 miles in the January to March, which happened to have the Beast from the East in it as well.
That was done.
So I had to stay up in Cardiff, and I was pushing some lady in her car out of the car park because she got stuck in the snow.
Like a real life superwoman. I feel so out of my depth talking to you. It was funny, but I had to walk down to treatment. I couldn't miss. I was hoping I might be able to miss a week, and go back, tag it on at the end. But they said no, with this one you need to come in. So I was staying up in a local hotel, and saying, can I stay tonight as well? And they were like, well, we've got people coming in, but nobody could get in because of the snow as well. So it just kind of rolled on, but that was fine. So I did that for the 3 months, and then my scans have been clear since that. Oh, wow. So,
but in 2022, I signed up for a half Ironman, the Swansea half Ironman.
Oh my god,
the 70.3, because it was the first one that they were doing down there, and I had done triathlon before, like years ago, but littler ones, if you like. And I didn't even own a bike at this point. I haven't had a bike since I'd been in Wales, so
wow.
So I did it on my husband's bike. We kind of got it. Tried to be custom fitted. It was a bit too big.
You put the seat down.
Yeah, the bike shop. We took it to a bike shop, and he was really nice as well down at County Cycles. And he'd said, I'll fit it for you. I wouldn't have sold you this particular bike, but I'll try and make it fit you as well as I can, type thing. So, so I kind of learnt to cycle from then. I was trying to learn the cleats and everything. So I've fallen off in various hedges in various places, and I can run, and I can run for quite a long way, but I'm not very fast, if you know what I mean. So I didn't really concentrate on the running. I'm fine with swimming because I grew up by the coast, and I thought, well, I'll leave that to its own being. But biking, and it's quite a hilly course around Swansea for me. So I was a bit conscious of the time cut-offs because they're really strict with them in Ironman and stuff. So yeah, that was a bit of a summer and winter of just learn to cycle, really.
You did it? I
did it, yeah. Wow. But just before I did it, I'd had scans just before because I tried to do Cardiff Olympic triathlon distance in the summer, and just to practice transitions and things like that. And I wasn't feeling particularly well, and I'd often get infections and stuff on that right side where I've had the surgery because it's all quite scarred and manky a bit after the radiotherapy. And so I've always got a packet of antibiotics that they're happy for me to keep, and if I feel unwell I'll start to take them, and that's fine. So I'd done the Cardiff one, not feeling the best, and I'd got a scan a couple of days after that, so I thought, that'd be interesting to see what shows up. And so when I went to my oncologist after that, he said, normally he's saying at that point, luckily he normally says everything's fine straight away. This time he said, how are you feeling? And I was like, oh God. And he said, the top bit of your lungs collapsed. And I was like, I'm doing Ironman in 6 weeks or 4 weeks, I think it was. Am I okay to do that? And he was like, well, theoretically it should reinflate. He said, so I'll scan you after it. He said, yes, you can do it. Just stop if you don't feel well. So I was a bit like, okay. So anyway, so I went down not quite sure whether it was fully back or not. But so I thought, well, I'll stop. And in my mind, actually, it probably helped because I thought, I can always stop after the swim. I can always stop after the bike. But the weather was really nice, which helped. Swim was fine. Didn't worry about that. Biking, I'd got my speed things wrong, luckily in the right direction. So I thought pace-wise, I was thinking I had to go slightly faster than actually I would have needed to. So I came in within the cut-off. And once I'd done that, I was like, almost job's done for me because the run was flat. I thought as long as I don't injure myself, so I had a banana, went for a pee, and thought, I'm not worried about. I wasn't worried about the time, as long as I came in within the cut-offs. Anything between it was fine for me. It was just
12 miles to go. Then was that run? Is it
12 13 and a half. It's a half marathon at the end. So yeah, it's the and that was fine for me. It was a nice sunny day, and I thought, right, well, I can finish it, and it's a tick in the box, really. So I feel like Swansea's done, and that was a really good achievement. And then I went for my scan, and it had reinflated. So
great news all around. That's incredible. So you did that with a collapsed lung.
Yeah, well, yeah, the top bit had gone down. Yeah, so just where you have the top lobe taken out, like the middle lobe will reinflate up into the space.
Okay.
But mine doesn't go. It does go all the way up to the top, but I think it gets clogged up because I can't clear it sometimes. So, I've had pneumonias and things like that since having the surgery and stuff. So sometimes I just feel a bit cranky, and I'll either take the antibiotics or just wait it out, or go to A&E if I needed to, and then they'll put me on antibiotics. But it's
that's incredible. Like it's such an inspiring story, and you seem obviously you don't seem you have an amazing, from speaking to you, ability to just from speaking to have an extreme positivity in a tough situation. Just it looks like to me.
Yeah, I guess.
For example, when the beast from the east came in, my dad had a big accident on the farm, and he got rushed to hospital. So he left me in charge of the farm, which at the time, all I could think of when he was saying this story was I was in charge of the farm when that beast from the east came in, and all the water pipes were frozen, and I couldn't feed the cows and couldn't feed and I thought I was probably the most stressed person in the world, and everything was against me. Meanwhile, you're probably doing this. You're pushing a woman in the car park, going down for radiotherapy, just getting on with it. And I was there, sapping away.
Well, yeah.
Thinking, I was in a tough situation. When in reality, I was doing.
Yeah, my husband was back at home, and he was, melting snow on the Rayburn and stuff because he was, having the beast from the east, and we were living up in the hills behind farmers at the time. And I was like, it sounded like I was living it up in this hotel in Cardiff, but actually staff couldn't get in, so the restaurant was shut and things like that. So it was all it was quite closed down, because I went down to the gym and they wouldn't let me do anything because it wasn't supervised. And I was like, oh God, So I ended up, I know one of the ladies who used to do my scans at Velindre, and she'd given me a running route around Cardiff. So I went down, I thought, I can go for a run. But I hadn't really got kind of winter kit very much. I was thinking I was going into the gym, so I was pretty but I've always tried to do park runs and things like that. That gave me a bit of regularity, and again, a bit of control back on your own time, to be able to go and say, well, this is, if you want me from Monday to Friday for radiotherapy, I'll do this on Saturday. Even if it's volunteering, I don't have to run it, and I don't have to, do a PB or whatever. I can go and take part in it, and it's something I'm choosing to do, rather than someone telling me you have to be here at this time and do this and do that and everything. And, must be the same, with your son and everything. And, you have to go to appointments at certain times and do things, and it's a bit out of your control. And, but you crack on with stuff because you don't really have a choice.
Yeah, like that's what's really hitting me here, is your ability to crack on with things. Like I think a lot of people, when they get a diagnosis like you have, or news like you have, a lot of people would just not give up. That's the wrong word, but just go into the shell a little bit and accept that you really you're doing the complete opposite. Like you're running up snow, which is amazing. And
I guess a lot of people have said, oh, you're really positive, as if that's why I'm here and others aren't. And I'm like, it's not around. It is about being positive. I kind of think, well, why have a bad day when you could have a good one? That kind of attitude, I suppose. But, I was lucky clinically, is why I'm here, really, that the way my tumour is and things like that was operable in the end after treatment, and that I had a surgeon who was prepared to take the risk. Because a lot of surgeons wouldn't have wanted to operate because of the amount of radiotherapy to the area, and it was really scarred. So they were saying, we'll try and do it by keyhole, but, we might end up having to do a thoracotomy where they crack the ribs and go in. And, I ended up seeing a brilliant surgeon, but, originally my oncologist had said, a lot of surgeons won't want to do this. But I do remember him saying, if this one says no, we'll find one who says yes. So he was really on board to, think outside the box, because normally they don't do surgery on advanced cases. So, but I had to have lots of, biopsies and things to check to see what the current situation was after the radiotherapy and whether I was operable or not. But there's a big thing about, where people say, oh, they lost their battle with cancer, and that kind of bugs me as well, because it makes it sound like you didn't try hard enough or you didn't fight hard enough. And that's just not right. It's the people that I have known who I've met through lung cancer and who are sadly no longer with us. Again, really positive people, didn't want to die. They would have chosen to live. They didn't sit back and say, well, I'm going to smoke my way into and drink my way into, my final hours. They were both, and you've got a cracking humour. They were really nice. So I'm kind of like, it's not all about positivity, and it's not all about not being fit. One of my friends, she was still out running. In fact, she went to A&E after a run because she'd got facial droop, and that was her symptom. She thought she'd kind of got a Bell's palsy or even had a bit of a stroke, and it turned out it had gone to her brain and she was stage 4 lung cancer. So that's when it gets diagnosed at a stage where it's late. Too late. Because you don't have nerve endings really in your lungs to say something's off, and you don't feel lumps, and so it's quite an insidious little cancer that it takes it to spread to somewhere else before something is flagged up and you end up in A&E, or you've ended up with a different symptom somewhere. And so people just need to be aware of it more, I think, and not say, oh well, I don't smoke, so it won't be that. It's I'd like to try and cut smoking out of the whole conversations, because there's a lot of different cancers that are affected by your ultra processed foods or something like that. You could, and nobody kind of says, oh, did you eat this or did you eat that, or so really with lung cancer it would be great to kind of remove that stigma from it, and just think everyone's got lungs, anyone can get lung cancer. You could be 20, you could be 80. People might smoke and never get lung cancer. People don't smoke and they do get lung cancer. So, it's not helpful in diagnosing it, I think, because people make a judgment.
Yeah, stereotype.
Yeah, and it might then determine whether you go for a test or not. And X-rays are quite cheap to do, so,
What would be your recommendation, like for anyone in terms of getting screened or like what?
There are, I think lung cancer, from when I was first diagnosed to now, lung cancer's come a long way. There's a lot of immunotherapy treatments. Treatments have got a lot better and more advanced and more targeted treatments. And there is some more screening. Roy Castle have brought in a screening programme, which again, it wouldn't have got me because it starts at 55.
Ah, okay.
So it's for, potentially for older people, but it's a start. But my advice was, if you think you've got something that needs investigating, go to your GP. And if you're worried about it, ask for an X-ray. You might well get given antibiotics and you might still be coughing. And if your GP doesn't, take heed of it, go to another one. Go back.
And chase them up.
Yeah, because, at the end of the day, you're the one that, is affected by it. And, there's no point being polite. That sounds awful, doesn't it?
No,
but,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I don't want to... I can imagine people saying, I don't want to keep hassling the GP. But if something's wrong, you also don't want to leave it late enough that it's not something that can be treated. And I think people, to a certain extent, you do have some subconscious awareness that something's not right. I don't know that I would have kept badgering about a cold thing up my nose. Looking back on it, it's not much. You kind of think, well, that's not much. And I could have said, your sinuses are fine, I'll stop there. But I went back to the GP going, so what is it then?
Yeah.
And I don't know, it might be nothing to have done with the lung cancer. It might just be an incidental finding.
So that could have not been anything to do with the lung. That
might not have been.
Oh, well.
But then I did read a paper at one point where it said if it's gone to the mediastinal nodes, which are, the centre of your chest, then it can be a symptom of in your nasal area. But I don't know. Who knows? Whatever it was lucky. But I was still out running. I was still out running, doing normal fitness. There wasn't anything that was making me think that I might have advanced lung cancer.
Like when I go for a run, I went for a run the other day, and I said, it's either like my lungs or my legs. I'll come back and I'll tell my Katie, my legs are fine, it's just my lungs. Or, my lungs are fine, it's just my legs. Sometimes your legs feel heavy and sometimes your lungs feel heavy. It's just my wording.
Yeah.
Like you didn't feel your lungs didn't feel heavy then?
No.
Does that make sense?
No. It was strange, and I kind of, at park runs, when it was Lung Cancer Awareness Month, I used to kind of do a little awareness thing in one of the park runs. But I was like, one of the symptoms is breathlessness. So if you feel breathless, and I'm like, you're not working hard enough if you're not breathless. Get out there. But it is, it's
Everyone's
hard.
breathless,
When you go for a run, you're going to be out of breath. If you say, well, I go upstairs, I'm a bit breathless, doctors will go, fine. So it's a hard one to pin down. It's like, how is it compared to how you are normally, I suppose? But I didn't have that. To me, the only thing I remember was this funny sensation of something feeling different on the right-hand side, and that's where it was diagnosed, on the right-hand side. And it was as if, like, you take a deep breath in, but there's something up near the top of your eye where it's a bit cold as it kind of goes in, and you could feel it kind of going down a bit cold, which is an odd, it's hard to explain, but
you know that something wasn't right, and you know you had to go check it out. It's like a subconscious.
Yeah, I checked it out, and I think now I'm, some things I don't. With infections, I'm kind of presuming it's an infection, and I'll take antibiotics. I don't kind of keep trekking to the GPs or whatever, but I'll know when something's wrong. We ended up in A&E, and it turned out to be pneumonia. They scanned and everything.
Yeah.
They've been really good. I mean, the NHS for me have been fantastic and really proactive, and can't be more kind of behind them in a lot of pressures on the NHS. And I think once you're in the system, it's great. And actually, by having a cancer diagnosis as well, anything that I go to now, if I say something's up, they'll probably check it out a bit more because it could be linked.
Yeah. So
I had foot drop one point where I just lost my right foot, just went weird. And I'd been gardening all day and kneeling down on the rockery. And, I stood up and then almost kind of fell over because my foot didn't move. And I went and saw someone from the running club who's also a physio, and they did a quick check on me because I'd messaged them saying I've done a thing to see the GP, but I can't see them till tomorrow. Is there anything I should or shouldn't do in the interim? And so he said, we'll pop down and I'll have a quick look. And so then he was like, I think you need to go to A&E. And so by the time I'd seen the GP the following day, they'd done a MRI of my spine, they'd done a head scan, they'd done a bladder scan. So I kind of arrived at the GP going, oh, no, it's fine. I think it's this, that and the other. And it was just where I'd been kneeling on the rockery.
Yeah, I know that feeling when you get up.
Yeah. But the thing as well, I think when you had cancer, even if you've got a cold or you've got a pain or something, especially in the early days of a diagnosis like that, you're like, has it come back? Is it this? There's a lot of anxiety around scan time. And because you can be being scanned every 3 months, you're kind of either having a scan or you're waiting for results or you're waiting to be scanned, and it's very much luckily I'm at 9 months scans now because it's got a really high recurrence rate, lung cancer. And so I'm 10 years out from my diagnosis and they're still scanning me every 9 months.
Wow.
And he still scans my head. And I've never had it hasn't spread to my head at all. But stage 3B, normally, the fact it was going up my neck, that's where it was going. So
that surgery you had on your neck then, that was the main focus on that, was to try and eradicate it going?
Yeah, there was one of my scans had shown up in, part of the routine scanning, had shown up that it had come back, theoretically, in the up near my collarbone. So there was a question about whether it had just missed the range of the initial radiotherapy just by being a bit high, rather than being it's come back, whether it wasn't quite gone, if that makes sense. So they couldn't then biopsy it. We went to go and get it biopsied to see if it was malignant or not, because they can only tell the shape on the scan. But he couldn't biopsy it because it was too near the arteries, like the jugular or the carotid artery or whatever. And he was like, I can't get to it safely, so we either need to wait for it to get bigger, which you don't want to wait for it to get bigger. He said, or we can just go ahead and refer you for surgery based on your history and the fact of it being where it is. And so we went straight for surgery. And I thought, they'll do a really small little nick and take out that node, and it'll be a really small bit of radiotherapy. And it was like ear to the front of your throat. And I was like, and then it was 6 weeks of radiotherapy again, but it was malignant.
Wow.
So it's the right decision to do.
Yeah, definitely.
But if it hadn't shown up on the scan, that would have been, that's where it's heading. So they're going to keep an eye on stuff. So I've still not got much sensation down the side of my neck and stuff. It's all a bit numb, but it's
At what stage do they change then from 9 month screening, or is it always the 9 month screening?
Well, originally, when I first was diagnosed, he said we'll scan you every 3 months for the first year. Then years 2 to 5, we'll change to 6 monthly, and then years 5 to 10 will be annually. So that's how I'd understood it. And I guess for the first year, I was doing chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and then had the surgery. So they kind of kept doing it a bit more regularly after the surgery anyway, so the 3 months carried on a bit longer because I was still having active treatment. Then it went to 6 monthly, and then I had the neck recurrence, so then they went back to 3 monthly for a bit after the neck, and then it's gone to 6 monthly. But my oncologist is brilliant, and he's very like, when would you like it? Do you want it 6 monthly? Do you want to go to a year? And at one point we were kind of doing it in in June and December times. Well, December was really hard when I was up in the hills because I might be snowed in. Yeah. Sometimes I was like, I can't get to the results. You'll have to ring me. I'm stuck in the snow up here. So actually, when we went to do, I said, how about doing 9 months? Because then it would bring us into the summer, and then we could go annually from the summer onwards, and then I won't have the travel issues. And so that's been fine. But I mean, the last scan that I'd had, and when I went for the scan, I felt really like I'd got a chest infection, and I went for the results, and he said, how are you feeling? And I thought, that means something's up probably. And he said, they've reported it as a recurrence again, so as if it's come back. He said, I think it's infection. And I said, I felt like I had an infection when they scanned me. And I said, and I feel much better now than I did when they scanned me, which also was quite encouraging. He said, well, we'll need to do another urgent CT and have a look and see, because he showed me it on the scan. You could see this kind of big kind of golf ball bit again up in that side of the lung, and it had gone. So it was the infection. So again, those kind of things throw out the whole, 6 monthly or the 6 monthly or 9 monthly, just because of, I need to put an urgent one in here, or where the Ironman one bit was, it's collapsed a bit, let's put in one in another 6 weeks, or so. I kind of I've probably been overly scanned a little bit, but it's for safety wise, it's great. I'll always never say no to a scan is my but then it does bring risks down the line. I do remember him saying at one point about having scans, and he says it will increase your chances of breast cancer in 10 years time by having all these regular scans, because it's all on the chest area and everything. And I was like, if I get to 10 years time, hurrah.
Someone tells you got a 1 in 3 chance of,
I was like, doesn't matter. But now I'm at 10 years time, so hey. Wow. But
it's incredible.
You just take each day. I think for me, I didn't want to live each day worrying about dying from lung cancer when something else might get me. You know what I mean? Then you've missed out some days of having fun, haven't you? So
it's very good advice. It's very good.
It's not going to change it either. There's the things, a lot of people are very worried about. I'm kind of very much a bit, can you change it? Will worrying about it change it? So if I've had a scan, if I really worry about the results, are they going to be any different? They won't be. I might as well worry about them when I know what they are. And then do I worry about that, or do I just find out what we can do?
You're very stoic.
It's very practical, I suppose. I'm a bit black and white now. I think I say to my mum sometimes, I'm a bit black and white, mum. It's like either it is or it isn't. So, but maybe that's just, I've had the edges knocked off me a bit.
Yeah, I'd say it's very stoic. Like it's amazing. Like I quite like reading like the stoic quotes of like Marcus Aurelius, and he'll say things like that. He's like, if it's not worrying you, don't worry about it. Like it's very
Well, I suppose it's like I always remember a quote where it was like, if someone tells you, oh, you've got 1 in 10,000 chance of whatever, you could be the one. Someone's got to be the one. So.
Yeah, I think we were, when we had Harry, we were like 1 in 2,000 of having, because everyone goes through like a genetic test. So I think we were like 1 in 2,000, so it was very, very low chance. Didn't even look at it, like just saw about 2,000 and didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
But now, every time I see a chance of something, so like every now and then I'll try, one of those online competitions to win a car, and I've got like 1 in 500 chance, and I'm like, ooh,
you could be the
one. I relate it all to that.
Yeah.
Which is. But then if someone said to me as well, if you had 200 cups upside down on a table and there's a ball underneath one, you don't think you're going to pick that ball up, do you? But you might do.
Yeah.
There's always a chance, isn't there?
Yeah. No, it's been interesting. I think the doctor that said to me, you've got 1 in 3 chance of being here in a year's time, and he said, I don't want you leaving this office thinking surgery is an option. And I always remember that, and I was thinking, really? Because up to that point we'd really pinned hopes on surgery. And I went back to see the same doctor a year later, and he was doing a test for me to get surgery. And he then was saying, there's always an exception, and you're it. And he was like, grab surgery if you can get it. He was really nice. And I don't blame him. He was giving me exactly the right, conversations at the right time. But I kind of went back, and I've seen him since, probably 7 or 8 years after all that, because he did another, like a bronchoscopy on me to check out the lungs. They do those occasionally. And, he was like, hello, it's been a while. And I was like, and he'd obviously remembered me from back then. So
that's amazing. They've got such a hard job as well, haven't they?
Really hard. And they're hard conversations with people.
Of course.
It's tough going. But to start off with, I felt like a real fish out of water as well. When you go into the waiting rooms, there's a lot of really unwell looking people, and I was 43 and running and feeling quite fit. And you kind of look around thinking, is this the future? Is this what's in store for me almost?
Wow.
And I kind of bound in and talk Ironman to the oncologist, and I think he thinks I'm completely potty. He's just really, I'm like, am I all right to do this? He's like, oh, go on then.
So I just want to run up Snowdon and do a marathon.
After my lung surgery, I had just tell you this one, but a doctor came round who was a different doctor who'd done the surgery, because it was a weekend, I was hoping to be discharged. And he came round with some students, and he was looking in the notes. And he said, I think it's time to discharge this woman and let her get back on the mountains. And I was thinking, what's in my notes? I was like,
crazy.
what have they written? But yeah, so it was quite so
Go back to the lungs.
yeah, and I'm thinking, God, what are they thinking about me? So, and I was meant to be having physio as well to get my lung capacity up, and the physio was coming, and you have a kind of drain that comes out to suction out after the lung surgery, so they detached the drain, and she said, I'm not getting you out of breath enough by walking up and down the corridor. I'm going to bring in a bike to try and get you out of breath a bit more, get the lungs more exercised. And that was on the Friday. And I'd gone on the Saturday and I never saw her again. And I thought, God, the poor woman, she's going to come back. Going, where did she go?
She's pushing a bike into that.
But yeah, so it was a bit, the nursing staff going, oh, do you want the lifts down there? And I was like, oh, don't worry, I'll take the stairs. So they were but it's all about use it or lose it, really, just keep it exercised. And respiratory physios are like, if you're running, it's the best exercise you can do for your lungs. So, I'm
a massive believer in that, like, and just humans in general. Like, my grandparents, they passed away now, but my granddad, for example, he worked up until he was 92, and he was working every day, milking the cows 5:30 in the morning, and then he just decided to stop. No real health. He could have probably carried on going, but as soon as he stopped, his health just deteriorated, and it's kind of like your body says, okay, time to...
you've stopped.
There's something to that. Not that you have to work all your life. I think you have to have a purpose and something to get you out of bed in the morning, I think.
And I think keeping fit as well, it's got multiple benefits, hasn't it? Because physically it was keeping me fit, but it also gave me time to myself as well, and fresh air, and that bit of keeps the blood pumping, and generally you are more healthy. You tend to eat more, or I tend to eat healthier if I'm exercising. So, and if you're having a complete slump, that's when you're hitting a pizza or something, it's that kind of, I'm either all healthy or I'm just a bit all slumped, and I was going to say, I'm not always like a kind of sport bunny, but I'm quite I do tend to try and get on that fitness side of things more often than not. So
yeah, it's amazing. I love the fact that your husband, when you said to him 3 months after having surgery that you wanted to run the Snowdon Marathon, I love the fact that he was like, yep.
He's really, really brilliant. He's been so encouraging, and he'll be, suggesting stuff as well. And so he was there at the, he's been at appointments with me, he's been at start lines of things with me, he's been at finish lines cheering me in, and he's helped me, understand, I guess, as well, because he's got a bit of a medical background to him as well in terms of clinical stuff. So he's tempers things okay, because sometimes I've entered for Snowdon Marathon and I've got a chest infection and I know it's lurking a bit, I can tell, and I'm like, I start registering and I've got my trainers and I've got my number, and and he's like, do you know, I don't think you should do it, that's going to push that infection deeper. And I'm like, oh, okay, but I would listen to him because he talks sense. Some things it's a bit like the oncologist, I suppose. It's like that. There's always that you can stop. You don't have to finish it if you start it. But I sometimes prefer not to start it than not to finish. Prefer to be a DNS than a DNF. I like to, if I've started, I'll keep going, well, I could just go to there, or I could just now go to there. So
one more song.
Just keep pushing a little bit extra. But no, my husband's been brilliant. He's really, really supportive of me, and he's not faltered at all in it, because it's been a hard trip for the other side of it. Well, kind of cracking on with doing what I'm told, I guess. But for him, it's he's also out of control with it, because but he's also having to support and try and pick up what's going on in general life. We've got 5 dogs at the time when I was diagnosed, and so we're heading over to hospitals, and the neighbours were coming to let the dogs out for us, and everything happens at such short notice, especially when you're first diagnosed, and a lot of the appointments are quite a long way away for us. So we're kind of 5 dogs at home, one which was quite a small puppy. We're like, we're going to have to take them with us, or can't do that.
What dogs have you got?
They're all rescue dogs. We're down to 3 now, and they're all kind of spaniel collie.
Busy ones then.
Yeah, they come running with us up in the forestry, or used to.
Oh, wow.
2 of them are now a bit arthritic and a bit old, but the spaniel collie will still come out, and he's going to be 11 soon. But so yeah, they're great dogs, and again, that's another good reason to get out running, because they need to walk. And,
of course.
You might not feel it, and you think, oh, it's pouring with rain, and there's something wagging at you. You're like, oh, okay then, come on then.
How much money have you raised altogether now?
27,000 something, so
it's incredible.
Yeah, and everyone's been really supportive of it. It's been, when I was doing the fundraising initially, I'd go into town and take the dog to the vet or something, and the reception lady would be, oh, here's a £5, here's a tenner, or and you just bump into people and they sponsor you or just give money towards the fundraising. There's been a group of ladies who were walking, they'd lost a friend to lung cancer, and so they'd do a walk in her memory, and then they donate that into my fundraising for the lung cancer, and it's another lady opened her garden for a big garden party we had over a 2-day event, and we were members of a gardening club, so everyone kind of chipped in, and local nurseries were offering plants for sale, local businesses were offering raffle prizes, and that raised like £5,000 altogether over the 2 days. And I'd literally just had my surgery. I thought the surgery was going to be after the garden party, so it was about 3 weeks before the surgery or something, and they had the surgery, and then it was about 3 weeks after maybe. So I'd come out of the hospital, and it was the first day I was driving, and I remember I'd got a couple of friends who'd come up from, old school friends who'd come up from kind of Dawson, Sussex and whatever, and I was driving and herring through the lanes a bit, stopping off at people's houses who were just passing us cakes because they'd made them for the stalls, and we were just taking things in and arriving at, and by the end of the weekend I was a bit slumped, but I wasn't expected to be kind of just post-surgery and sitting in this massive garden party, but it raised a lot of money and it was really good, and the community's been really, really supportive, and it's just been, I don't think some of the things I might not have done if I hadn't been diagnosed, which sounds a bit weird as well. I don't know if Ironman would have crossed my mind, but now it feels like that would be a really good box to tick. The only problem is I'm thinking, what next?
Well, what is next? What boxes have you got?
I don't know. I was looking at a few last night, but I don't know. Because I said to my husband, I was the fittest I'd been for quite a long time in 2022. I was doing a lot of the kind of Joe Wicks body coach app exercises that were during COVID, so I got some weights at home and I was just doing those on there because I find it easier to follow someone doing something than having it written on a piece of paper type thing. So, and I got quite into those, quite enjoying them, and I'd signed up then for this Ironman just because a lot of people, it's a new one in Swansea and a lot of people from the club were doing it, and I was like, wow, I can swim, don't know if I can bike, I can run, so how hard can it be? So, and I kept kind of thinking I could pull, and needn't do it, they could reserve a place, that's what the initial thing is, do you want a place reserved? And then suddenly I was getting something from Ironman going, you've got a place reserved, and I'm like, oh God, oh dear. So, I think it's just been I was the fittest I was in 2022, and that's because I had a goal as well, so I was out cycling, and I'd go for a long bike ride, I'd get into Lampeter, I'd go for a run and then come back and get in the pool. So although it was a triathlon in a different order, I'd do that and then we'd go for lunch, and now I just go for lunch. So I'm kind of thinking I need something to get me going again, because with a focus it does channel your energies, doesn't it? Yeah,
of course. Yeah, so, I think that's the same for everyone, even the people that come in the gym with me.
Yeah.
The ones that I think get the best results are the ones that do have a goal, and more often than not, it's like a performance goal, whether they want to do a high rocks or get their first pull up or anything. I think they're the ones that stick to it. Like if you just chase how you look in the mirror or something.
I'm not too worried about that.
No, you know what I mean. Like I'm exactly. That's why we don't have mirrors in the gym.
Yeah.
So we're performance.
Yeah, put me off. I think if I saw that, I'd be like, God. But it's my mindset's changed a bit since I was very first diagnosed as well. It's another interesting thing, I suppose, with hindsight, you look back. But when I was first diagnosed, I was getting my scans every 3 months, as I said, and it made me wary of entering stuff because it's like, well, what will the situation be in 6 months? Yeah. Will I be in treatment again? Will I take the event, or will I have to miss it and then I lose the entry fee? Whereas now I'm a bit more confident to enter something a bit in the future. Whereas before it was like, I don't know if I'll be being scanned, if I'm going to be in treatment, if I'll be here. It was just everything was up in the air a bit. So, that kind of, your mindset slightly shifts. And when I became eligible for surgery and had the surgery, and the surgery was a success, I mean, that was a really big mind shift because it went from them saying, this is your chance of survival, which was quite small, And that quite small part turned into this is the chance of recurrence. And that's a big shift in your head, because you're like, really? You know, has it really flipped round that much? And I'd walked past a doctor I was in the Heath Hospital in Cardiff for the surgery. And, you know, I'd seen scans where I've got this kind of golf ball thing sitting in my lung. And he was looking at an image on his screen as I walked round behind him. And he said, oh, these are your x-rays. And it was clear, you know, because they'd taken that bit out. So there was no blob. And I remember thinking, like, wow, you know, it's gone. It's gone. You know, that blob has gone. Whether, you know, there's minuscule bits that obviously they've mopped up bits with it. But, you know, you kind of think, actually, that's a bit of a game changer at the moment. Now that's really changed big time to what your chances are. And
you can visually see it as well, which is really cool, isn't it? Yeah,
you know, and they've all been, you know, the doctors, as I say, have been amazing. And some of them are, you know, quite good friends as well. Actually, interestingly, thinking cattle strength, because we've been house hunting recently, or thinking cattle as well, but because it sounds a bit weird, this, doesn't it? I know I'm going off a tangent. But we were house hunting, and we were looking at a property that was really near a dairy farm, and there was something that's saying about having ammonia in the slurry, and that how it can be bad for people who've already got chest issues, lung issues. And so we became very involved in terms of finding out how people were spreading the slurry at this particular farm, and how it was stored, and all this kind of stuff. And one of my respiratory consultants, who also does triathlon, has done the Ironman down in Tenby and stuff, and he's on WhatsApp, he's a cyclist and stuff, and I WhatsApped him, and I haven't seen him for years, you know, and I kind of WhatsApp going, strange question. So, how would I be living near a dairy farm? And he replied about like 2 hours later, going, oh, sorry for the delayed response. I've been doing some research.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. And he was going, it depends on the prevailing winds. And, you know, and oh, bless him, it was really, really kind of him. But, you know, I suppose it has an impact on my decisions as well, in ways that you might not predict, I suppose, because that was put a bit of a spanner in our...
Yeah, I never would have thought that that would have been something to consider, but obviously.
Yeah. You know, and I think he probably hadn't been asked it, but it was something once we'd read that, we were a bit like, oh,
it's
gosh.
An important question.
Do we need to think about that? Because otherwise, you know, if every time muck's spread round, is it going to be an issue for being in the house or having all the windows shut? And
of course.
Know, but so it was just suddenly something to think of.
I'm keen to know what. You know, when you're doing like every marathon or Snowdon marathon 3 months after surgery, and how do you talk to yourself in your head when you're in like a tough situation, like if you're struggling on that run, or if you're struggling on that Ironman, like what do you tell yourself?
Do you know, I really enjoyed, but both events I really enjoyed, and in a certain, if I get to a point where I think this is hard going, I kind of flip it and think there's a lot of people who would wish to be in this position and be able to be out here if they could be. So maybe I'll just do a mile for them, you know, because, you know, I'd had friends who've been in treatment, and, you know, I'd be going, oh, I'm going for a run. Great, you know, lucky me. You know, so if I'm out and it's a bit hard, you know, I'm out. You know, so I kind of flip it to that bit and say, right, well, you know, I'm really fortunate that I can be out here doing this still. So, and not everyone's this lucky. So, although it's a bit tough, hooray, I can do it. They're getting it tougher, really, if they're not able to get out. So, probably that, I guess. Yeah.
That's good advice.
Just enjoy it. And, you know, if it's peeing with rain and stuff, then it's still nice to be out and getting windswept, isn't it? You know, rather than being stuck in bed and not being able to get out.
Yeah, it's kind of like I get to instead of I have to.
Yeah. A lot of people might want to be able to do what you're doing, and you can do it. So, you know, enjoy what you're doing, because you've got the ability to do it. Sometimes if I'm not very motivated and sitting on the couch and thinking, I ought to go out and go for a run, you know, that's sometimes enough just to do a mile for someone, you know, in my head. So,
that's cool.
You know, and by the time you've done a mile, then you might as well carry on a bit further.
You're wet now.
Yeah, you're out, you're wet, you're soggy, go and have a laugh. But yeah, you know, I like the social side of running. As I say, I'm not fast. I rarely overtake people, you know, only if someone cramps up or something that I'm lucky enough to overtake. But I can keep going for keep going for quite a while. So things that are the longer runs, like the Snowdon or the Ironmans, probably plays to my favour a bit because I can
keep going.
Yeah, it was just that bike bit I didn't know about. And thank God I didn't have a mechanical because I'd never have got a tyre off or done any fixes on the bike in time. But, you know, the weather was nice, the day was nice, sport was great. And, but I just have to think what the next one is now.
Well, we're doing a Harry's hiking match. If you want to join us, it'd be amazing. If you could, if you want to be involved in that, you're more than welcome. We're doing the Ceredigion Coastal Path.
Okay.
More of a power walk there. But from Ennislas to Cardigan.
Okay.
I think it's 62 miles?
Yeah.
I'm hoping to do it in, well, I said 21 hours, but...
Oh, okay. Well, that's pretty good going then.
Yeah.
That's quite a hike.
So I'm Down syndrome awareness day now.
Yeah.
So if you want to join us, it'd be a
Thank you very much.
little challenge.
Yeah, thank you for the offer. I shall look at the date and see. Yeah.
Where can people find you?
I've got my fundraisings on, if you look at Roy Castle Lung Cancer Foundation and put Jane Holmes in, it should come up with my fundraising page. I think Janie MX on Instagram maybe. I don't use Instagram a lot, as you found out. So, but I am using it a bit more now. So I'm a bit of a dinosaur in technology, I think. So, but otherwise you'll just find me up in the hills or at the running club or, you know,
walking the dogs,
pottering around somewhere in Lampeter.
It's been incredible to talk to you.
Well, thank you very much for the invite. It's been really nice as well to come and meet you and chat to you and see the great setup you've got here.
Yeah. If that doesn't motivate and inspire you today to go out for a run, I'm not sure what will. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Cheers.